What we gonna do is we gonna take white people names and put "la" or "duh" in front of them. LeSean, DeSean.
Okay, but what if it's a girl?
Then we just added at the end too. Leshonda, DeShonda.
That's too gimmicky. Give me something else.
Okay, well for my next trick, we gonna name them after brands.
Like name your kid after a company?
Exactly. Mercedes, Amiri, Dior. And the nice thing is you can mix and match. So your son can be Amiri Dior Johnson. And then your daughter can be Dior Amiri Johnson.
Ooh, I like that. And we can combine it with the first thing. Do like La Nike or Da Honda.
Da Honda? Damn! That's low-key tough!
Oh, you like that one, huh? You can use it on your kid if you want.
That's why you get the big bucks, Steven! But wait a minute. Why are we devoting resources to making black names?
So we can discriminate against them on job applications.
Damn, Steven! That's low-key some chess type shit!
That's what we do here, JC.
And for my last trick, we gonna take two random syllables and put "is" at the end. Quintarius, Jamirius.
Okay, but why "is"? Isn't that like Greek or some shit?
Steven, we don't give a fuck!
My bad. I forgot that part.
Now let's put it all together. Da Honda Quintarius Johnson.
Christ, that's fucking awful. That application's going straight in the trash.
Shalom, shalom, shalom. All praises to the Most High, Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, which is to say in the Paleo Hebrew, Yahweh, which is the name of our Heavenly Father, meaning He is, and that is who the world ignorantly calls God. Bahashim, which means in the name. Yahweh Shai, which means He is our salvation. And that is who the world also ignorantly calls Jesus, a so-called black man, who, by the way, only came for the Israelites, which brings us to our discussion / topic this morning, particularly the Southern Kingdom and their names, as we saw it so being eloquently explained to us, okay? Because these names that we have are just that. They're a mock, they're a scoff, they're a byword and proverb, okay? Because those names that we get, that our parents, particularly the so-called black woman, tries to spice up the name and add all type of shit onto it, it just goes to further ridicule us, okay? And you see it, all right? Whether it was a comedic, court jester that the guy was making fun of, or whether the CIA actually uses it or the jobs use it, because they can sometimes systematically discriminate against you by putting in an application with a name like Gucci or Diamore or LeSean or Quintarius, okay? See? So this is the book of Proverbs, chapter 22 and verse 1. It says, a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, see? Because in the ancient days, we had names that actually meant something, okay? We had names that meant something, all right? Even until recent here, we had, in America, we had names that meant something, all right? And not just name brands like Gucci or Mercedes or Honda or things of that magnitude, man. You see, we had names that actually meant something, okay? That's why we return back to our heritage. We get a Hebrew name, all right? Speaking of myself, Tazamach, which means to what? To grow, okay? So our names had meanings behind them, not these names of these corporations and companies and things of that magnitude. Because why? There's no riches in these names. It says a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and love and favor rather than silver and gold. Because back in the ancient days, your name meant something, all right? You were from the house of such and such, okay? And that carried a particular weight, All right. But now, because we were destroyed for a lack of knowledge, we take on these names, out of admiration of wanting to be, you know, Mercedes or Gucci or Lexus or something of that magnitude. All right. Because our people, they want to feel important, especially being trotted and stepped on, but they don't want to return back to the Father, man. Okay, there's no promises in being black, all right? You don't get promises in being so-called Spanish or so-called Native Americans. The promise only lies with the Israelites, all right? When you return to your prospective tribe, whether it's Gad, Reuben, Simeon, Benjamin, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, all right? See, the promises comes to those names, okay? Because why? Those are the sons of Jacob, which goes into what? Israel, Yasharallah, Prince of the Power, see? There's meaning, there's substance behind a Hebrew name, man. Not some damn slave American name that our people have come up with to cope with not having it and not making it and wanting to be someone or something in this wicked and God-forsaken country. America, Babylon the Great, the United States of America. Happy 4th of July. Yeah, right. 250 years of complete wickedness, okay? So it says, Proverbs 22 and verse 1, a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and love and favor rather than silver and gold. Because why? You think the Lord is looking out for someone named Quintivius? Because that person more than likely has no understanding of who they are, of why they here, and what it takes to turn back and get favor. All right? Because why? We were given these names in captivity. All right? Now, am I saying that person can't be delivered? No. I'm saying as far as knowing who we are, those names doesn't mean anything. Okay? Because why? We were brought here because of our disobedience, and in doing so, we lost our heritage, our culture. And part of our heritage and culture is what? Having names that meant something. All right? This is Jeremiah chapter 17, and we lost our language. In verse 4, it says, and thou, even thyself, shall discontinue from thy heritage. So we had to take on other names. All right? Particularly our slave master's last name. So in the midst of having a slave master's last name, our people try to spice it up and take the first name and make it, what's the word? Make it unique to the black plight or struggle or fight, instead of returning to the law, statutes, and commandments, all right? And keeping the word to the best of their ability and having faith. Our people want to go around every single avenue except for just returning to the Father through the only begotten Son, Yahushua. All right? It says, and thou, even thyself, shall discontinue from thy heritage that I gave thee. And we had Hebrew names, okay? We had a culture. We had tribes, okay? Now, what do they give us? A damn 4th of July cookout, barbecue, and say, this is your new name, Quinterius. This is your new name, Leshonda. This is your new name, Mercedes. This is your new name, Lexus. Have a nice birthday. Have a nice 4th of July. Have a nice whatever other wicked holiday that they've come up with to keep us further from serving our powers. Yahweh, why Yahweh Shai. All right? So it says, and thou even thyself shall discontinue from thy heritage that I gave thee. And I will cause thee to serve thy enemies in the land which thou knowest not, America. For ye have kindled a fire in my anger, which shall burn forever. See? Forever. Until the Lord comes back to rescue us. All right, until Yahushua returns, that anger is going to kindle forever. Because why? We're going to continuously go off in these ratchet, decrepit, sinful bodies. Okay, but when we're made perfect, when Yahushua returns, we will no longer kindle that anger. Okay, but until then, we're going to be a byword and a proverb, and particularly going into these wild, crazy, outlandish names, man. Okay, an employer is going to see that name, and you know what? Crumble it up and throw it straight into the garbage. Because why? It has a certain stigma to it. Okay, so let's get that in Deuteronomy. The curses. This is Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 37. It says, "And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword." See, that's where you get black or African American or Spanish or Native American. Those are all what? Bywords. Okay, it says, "And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whether Yahweh shall lead thee." See, we just read that in Jeremiah 17 and verse 4. We'll be cut off. All right. Well, guess what? Being cut off is what? You don't know your language. You don't have a right to claim to know your name. You see? But only that small remnant is going to return and claim that, okay? Before the great day of Yahweh comes, which is what? That judgment. All right? So you can continue to be in America and try to be unique and come up with these wild and outlandish names, and celebrate these holidays. But eventually this is all going to go to what? Hell in a handbasket, man. All right? Because America isn't set up to go on forever. And neither is these wild names. You're not going to have a Demetrius or a Leshonda or a Mercedes in the kingdom. No, you're going to have a Hebrew name, man, because that's part of our heritage, our culture. All right, we're going to speak the Lashon Kodash, the holy tongue, and we're going to set the standard for all other nations to follow after, okay? And if they don't, there's going to be consequences and prices to pay, all right? So ain't gonna make it too long. Matter of fact, we're gonna go ahead and close out. The point was driven. This is the book of 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 8. Well, let me make sure. Yeah, I did read Proverbs 22 and verse 1. This is the book of 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 8. It reads, "Be sober, be vigilant." Why? Because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour. Because 9 out of 10 times, a person with a name like, Quinterius or Leshonda or LeSean, they ain't really hitting onto nothing, deep or meaningful according to the Bible. All right, unless the Lord, woke them up. All right, because just look at the names. That speaks volume of the environment. All right, not to pass judgment or anything, but just saying, okay, we are under the curse as a people, man, and the names speak volume, man. All right, the names speak volume. It's in the name. We got to look at that again. Let's look at it one more time. Proverbs 22 and 1. A good name, okay? And that doesn't just mean having a good name, but you got to be in good standings with Yahweh while Yahweh Shai, all right? Because you can have a Hebrew name and still be wicked as hell, man, all right? But it says a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, see? It says in love and favor rather than silver and gold, see? Because if you have a good name, if you have a good rapport with Yahweh while Yahweh Shai, that's going to be better than gold and silver, because in the day of adversity, your gold and silver ain't going to be able to deliver you, but a good name, a good standing will, all right? And that's why we telling our people to return back to your heritage, your culture, all right? And serve the Lord with your whole heart, okay? And get a good name, all right? Not just in writing, but also in standing, okay? Because you can have a Hebrew name and be wicked as hell, man, all right? But return to the Lord with your whole heart, your whole mind, all right? And it says, a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches and love and favor rather than silver and gold. All right. So now to go back to 1 Peter 5:8, where it says, be sober, be vigilant. Okay, because understand we in captivity. All right. And understand that the Lord requires something from us, and that is to return back to our heritage. So it says, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour. Those that don't know who they are. Those that refuse to have a good name, all right, and a good standing and a good rapport with Yahweh, while Yahweh shot. All right, so be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour. All right. So with that being said, pray someone was edified through this lesson. And until the next time, if it be the Lord's will, stay strong, stay in the faith. Hey, we're almost home. Shalom. Peace.